Hello, welcome to Caesar's Snack Sandwich. Today I'm going to be taking a look at TIMESWAP. Now, TIMESWAP is a money market protocol on Polygon. It's a place where you can lend and borrow assets. But however, there's some really special things about this. First of all, there's no oracle. So there's no need for an oracle, which is, highly reduces some of the risk factors. They're isolated pools in a sense. So there's no cross collateral contamination, and there's no liquidations, sort of. Okay, now they have fixed maturity dates, so you when you do borrow from here, you don't have to pay back any time until the end. But if you don't pay back in the end, that's when you kind of get liquidated. Okay, so let's go over to first of all, I'm going to explain that the docs are pretty good. There's a lot of math inside them, so if you do want to come through and check out the math, it is here. I would suggest you have, as always, please come and read the docs, verify what I'm saying, and so forth. And the UI is very, very clean. Okay, very minimalistic. Okay, so you can see right now it's kind of alpha phase, so there's not a lot of pairs here. They're kind of testing things, but this pair is live right now. You can, if you wanted to lend, so I wanted to lend, it's just simple. I choose a token, I choose the collateral. Now, assuming that there is a maturity, so let's use the one that's there. So collateral ST and this pool. And then, so if I wanted to lend, say I have to connect my wallet. If I wanted to lend 10, it would tell me the APR that I'm going to get, and then the risk factor of the collateral, right? So what you can do is you can go to advanced and you can adjust them. So you can adjust it to higher APR but less collateral required, and then or lower APR and more collateral required, and so forth. Okay, so this is the UI is very clean and very neat, and it has the three actors, but I do have a flowchart that'll go through all three of these actors and explain kind of how it works in the back there. So let's go over to the flowchart and see how this thing works underneath. Okay, so here we are on the flowchart. We have three actors. We have dollar bill, we have boosted bill, and we have grandma bill. Okay, so grandma Billy, she knows that her two boys love to lend tokens to each other. So dollar bill loves to lend his assets to boosted bill, and boosted bill loves to take those lent assets out and lever up in degen. And she wants to help them to facilitate this. So she's the first actor in this protocol. Okay, so one of the things that I couldn't find anywhere was how to create a new pool. So I think it's permissioned right now. So the team is the only people who can create new pools, I think, or maybe you must use the smart contract. So the UI just doesn't allow you to create new pools, and maybe you just have to use the code, so to speak. So anyways, so grandma, she's not going to create the pool. We're going to say the pool is already created, but she's going to provide liquidity, be a liquidity provider to make this process more seamless and more fluid for these two. Okay, so she's going to provide both sides of them. So she's going to provide the collateral asset and the borrowing, like the debt asset. Okay, so she provides them. In return, she gets back two tokens. Okay, she gets back a liquidity token, which basically tells the protocol that she's the one who provided both. And this liquidity token can be used in DeFi, perhaps somewhere. Some places might say, oh, this is a valuable asset, and we will allow you to use it to borrow or lend or sell or whatever you want to do with this. Okay. Now, obviously, she's going to need this token to unwind her position. Okay. Now, they also talk about liquidity mining on certain pairs that are like long-term pairs and that are highly used assets. So they might provide some liquidity mining of the governance token of TIMESWAP, whatever that does. Now, there's nothing in the docs about the governance token, about what it might do, how it's going to work, any kinds of stuff like that. There is a little bit about talking about fees and stuff like this and little governance issues of that sense. Now, it does say in the docs that she will get a spread. So the interest paid to him will be less than the interest he pays, and she will get a spread of that. And then also some transaction fees. It's a little bit hard to understand exactly how the transaction fees work. However, she's going to have a claim on some of these transaction fees that both parties are going to have to pay. Okay. So she's also going to get this CDP or CDT, which is a debt token. So when she supplies her assets, she's basically acting as a lender and a borrower. Okay, so this is a weird one. So I tried to separate it and keep it separate. She's providing liquidity. However, she does have risk of default loans. Okay. And you'll see that as we come along. Now, the key thing that makes TIMESWAP very different than other lending markets is the use of the constant product formula. Now there's an extra asset or an extra perimeter inside there compared to Uniswap. However, there are things that you need to understand. So the duration of the market is set, okay? When the pool is created, maybe the duration is 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 1 week, I don't know. So this can be set and it's fixed for everybody, okay? So this is something that she has to keep in mind. So her assets are going to be in there for this duration, and she won't be able to pull out all of her assets until this duration is done, okay? Now, X will be the borrowable asset, okay? So this is a pool of X, and then Y is the interest rate, and Z is the collateral rate. So the amount of collateral required, and then you have the constant product. So as I go through the borrowing and the lending, you'll see how this formula comes into play a little bit more. So first we have Dollar Bill. Dollar Bill wants to lend his assets, so he lends his DAI into the pool, and he's given all 4 of these tokens, okay? Now, when he lends his DAI, he can set these perimeters. So he can adjust the interest rate to increase the collateral, or he can adjust the collateral down to increase the interest rate, okay? And these have a play in the tokens that he receives when he sends the transaction, right? So first of all, he's going to receive a principal token that says, oh, you sent 100 DAI in. But he's also going to receive a principal interest token, okay, which is like the DAI that he's supposed to get, right? Because he's lending, right? For this duration, right? So this will be adjusted by his acceptance of the interest rate that is quoted in the UI, right? And then they have these 2 insurance tokens, okay? And that's in the case of default, right? So the amount of insurance tokens will be, stipulated based on the collateral ratio that he has selected as his risk factor, right? Now he has 2 kinds. He has principal interest, so interest on his principal. If he is not able to get back his 100 DAI that he put in, then he will get ETH instead, which is the collateral of this market, right? And if he doesn't get back all of his interest that he's supposed to get, then he will get ETH instead. So these tokens only come into play, and you'll see, I'll talk about them a little bit in a second, okay? So along comes Boosted Bill. Boosted Bill wants to degen up, so he puts in his collateral, right? And while he's setting up the transaction to do this, he decides on how much DAI he wants, right? He decides on the APY he's comfortable with paying, right, for this duration. And then the formula quotes him how much ETH he needs to provide as collateral, right? So he puts his collateral inside, and he gets back this CDT, which is like his debt token, okay? He needs this to unwind his position, right? So it's just an NFT that basically has his perimeters and his settings, okay? Now, as time progresses, right, but the time has not, he hasn't defaulted yet. At any time, he can pay back his debt. So if he pays back his the debt that he's borrowed plus the interest that he's owed, and he will burn this token, right? And then everything's good. Then as you can see over here, likely Dollar Bill gets back his principal, right? As well as all his interest, and all of these tokens become useless. On the other hand, let's say he doesn't pay back in time for whatever reason. Maybe he's lazy, maybe he forgets, maybe he just goes on vacation and forgets about it, or maybe for some reason, the amount of DAI he has is worth more than the ETH because, ETH has gone down, right? So it doesn't make sense. Like he's got $10,000 worth of DAI, and the value of the ETH inside this pool is $9,000, he's not going to repay, right? So that's a risk that Dollar Bill has taken on. So when Dollar Bill supplies DAI to this pool, he has to consider himself long ETH in this case, okay? And the same with Grandma. Grandma has some risk there too, okay? So let's say he doesn't pay. So he's going to forfeit his DAI, or his ETH, right? And then over here we see now there's some level of this DAI will not be reclaimable because in this situation there's only 2 people, but there's also Grandma. Grandma's put some DAI in there, right? But so let's say some level of DAI is not claimable, right? So he can then use those insurance policies to get back some ETH to cover his losses, so to speak. So where does that come from? Well, as far as I can tell, this ETH is first going to be coming from the collateral used. Now, let's say he chose to use a collateral ratio that is more risky than what he set as his collateral ratio. Then the rest of that ETH will come from grandma. So grandma's going to kind of cover the position, and that's why she gets this, like, these transaction fees and the spread, and also these liquidity mining, assuming that they come about. So this is basically how I understand it, and I could have, I could be wrong. All I've done is read the docs. I haven't, vetted the team or anything. I haven't gone in and talked to anybody and so forth. But I think this project's pretty interesting. Like, I really like that it's a lending platform that doesn't require any oracles, and that it doesn't actually use any kind of cross-contamination of assets. It's very isolated. So when Dollar Bill lends his DAI, he knows his DAI is only at risk versus ETH. And, isolated markets are pretty interesting, and I think they are the way forward. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today, and I hope this has been useful and interesting, and goodbye.